From the lab of his mind, Rodney would put down the tracks, you dig, do the cuts, show me the grooves, have these great, heroic, epic ideas that we could spin. He'd set the tone, give me a beat, then another, these blasts from the past to explore the black unconscious. And on cue, I'd walk into my crib like Tupac, ready to release something new and spit some serious shit. Give mad vocals to the soundscape, then put it to bed. Producing with his rhythms, his suggestions for improvisation, I was responsible for the flow, for the raw storytelling elements, including mixing our thoughts in the studio, wrapping up stuff in the form of a griot, our chosen style, which had to be free. Rodney, my brother, pushed me to be in charge of creation, of speaking things into existence, and I tried my best to deliver as if developing a list of Christmas presents, or having already written a million little pieces and was just looking for an outlet. And that's how we worked. We harmonized, we got along well together. We didn't need no auto-tune or pitch correction or out-of-touch white record company executives telling us what to do. But luckily we had a sound editor, Becky Bradway, who left the content up to us, said it was cool to do it our way. Becky admitted to hating on meddlers and to being only interested in how she could amplify our music as information. By publishing, Rod and I understood that we were destined to become the nigger twins of hip-hop to our audience. That in the middle of the Middle West, we'd always be dancing our way out of constrictions, wishing we had the money to pay George Clinton, Funketeer George Clinton, and his parliament for the blatant overuse of a sample. Rod be the call, and I remained the response. The 1 and 2 meant to pump up the crowd at a party. Rod was the funky drummer, and I was the mic chanter. As for what you see here and now, well, we never wanted a fast race. Creative writing is like jazz, and you have to know the notes to know that you're improvising. But of course, there's really nothing there if you don't improvise, you know. And and I think a lot of writing for me is taking what already exists around me and understanding how I would like to put my own spin on it, so to speak. You know, I like spin because it is a political word, but it's also a word that's a turntablist kind of word, and I even like the word turntablist because it implies turning the tables, you know, of things. And so for me, that's what we do, you know, as writers. We help, you know, we redefine, reshape things in some ways, revision things in some ways, but to do that, you also have to be able to, you know, you have to be speculative, you know, and you can't just write with, work with and write with only what you know, which is, first of all, it's limiting. Second of all, if I try to write everything I knew about Decatur and hold to the exact detail of that, you know, I would never be able to sufficiently describe all those things in its factual, exact detail anyway. So what makes the difference is not my ability to render everything in total facts. It's what I bring to it. You know, that's what makes the difference anyway. It's what I bring to it out of my own head. And so it's always important for me to keep that process in mind. I could focus on Compton, try to render exactly every liquor store on the street corners and all of that. But in the end, that's not what people gravitate to. They gravitate to what I bring to it from my own perspective. You know, and that's what's going to really speak to them. So it's trying to, you know, and it's understanding that the world you create, and I always say that every text, every head is a different world. And it's understanding that that world consists of two things: what you know, and you know, what you'd like to know, or what you'd like to see, or what you'd like to explore or engage in, that would make this world seem, you know, again, more complex. You know, which I think complexity is always a great thing to shoot for about it. And so for me, music is the starting place of one that I think when it's done right, you know, texts are like music. You know, and that informational flow, and that's what music is to me, it's information. You know, and text for me, stories and poems and essays, when they're done right, they're informational flow. And sampling to me is another way, and I find it to be a more contemporary way to think of intertextuality. You know, and if I were teaching intertextuality, I would often say to people, if you know sampling, if you've listened to stuff in your, on your iPod and, on your headphones, and it contains a sample of this or that, then you know intertextuality. And you also know then, you can start to theorize then about the importance of sampling, just based on, why was this song different for you because it had this song in it? What made that experience change for you? In what ways was it better? And in what ways do you think it wasn't so great? And if you can at least talk about that in music, then you can talk about also text and intertextuality and what we do as writers and things like that. It's a way to open up, I think, even that conversation. So that's the first thing for me with sampling. The other thing is I just started to realize, I growing up, and this gets to biographical notes, when I was doing the Young Authors Contest and even those things, I didn't think I had the same vocabulary or the same privilege of background as many people around me. So I had to find ways to make up for that, to compensate for that. And what I decided early on was that what I'm really good at is taking things that I hear and see around me and synthesizing that and putting something else, creating something that looks new out of it. I realized, ultimately later on I understood that's a lot of what creativity is anyway. It's just that. It's not building bricks or making bricks. It's taking the bricks that are already there and finding new ways to stack them. And when you think of anything that moves, that flows, how can you not think of it as music? And so for me, that's kind of what it is in some ways. It's this. It both addresses what kind of writing I want my text to be, but also music plays this role for me in just kind of, again, cutting across borders and boundaries and giving people things that they can identify with. So sometimes even if they don't understand the language I'm putting down, they understand the tone. They understand, the mood I'm trying to convey, based on the flow, the rhythm, the bass, and sometimes when I say bass, I like to say the bass, they understand, just like when I said that right now. I mean, you kind of understand certain things where I'm coming from, not only because of the language itself, but because of the sound. I will publish something in one journal, and then my goal or aspiration is to remix it and then publish it again, and not have that called a simple reprint. In the way that a musician, or I won't even say a musician in this case, I'll say, music performer, or Mariah Carey or someone, sings a song, and then says, well, and then I'm going to let someone remix this song or do a club version or a new edit or something like that, and they give it a whole new texture. And at some point I just said, if artists can do that, if songwriters and artists and people who are making cuts can do that, why can't we do that as writers? Why should it be any different? In some ways, why can't I give new textures to the pieces that I've done when I knew that those new textures existed even as I was writing the original?